Great. Well, thank you both for joining us. Hi, Kimberly. Thanks both for joining us today. Everyone, I'm just going to give you a little bio of Kimberly and Lisa before we begin. And yep, I'll just let them get started on their presentation really as soon as we can, because they'll probably have lots to tell us. So Kim is an experienced educator teaching and facilitating learning at the national, provincial, district and school level. She has over 25 years experience as a teacher and in the various roles in district level and at the Ministry of Education. Over the years, her passion for learning has been driven by experiences as a parent, teacher and consultant. She's currently working at as the Planning and Implementation Manager for Math with Pearson in Canada and providing support to all things Mathology. Supporting educators in their learning is at the heart of Kim's partnerships. And we also have Lisa. Lisa is supporting Kim today. She'll be the presenter for the Mathology Little Book session, and sorry, my eyes are struggling to read this tiny print here. Lisa is Pearson's Western Canada Regional Director based out of Calgary. Prior to starting at Pearson, Lisa was a classroom teacher in her hometown of Lloydminster, and she will be monitoring the meeting chat today. So thank you both for taking the time out to chat with us about Mathology. And hopefully everyone's in the right session too.
Well, thank you to everyone that came and has taken a little slice of their day to learn more about Mathology Little Books. This is a resource that is coming very soon to your schools. So before we start, what I would like to know, if you have the opportunity to put into the chat, is do you like reading and sharing stories with students?
I'm seeing a lot of yeses.
Okay, because
if there's French,
if there's no answer, then that's a little bit of a problem. But I think today, because you love teaching and sharing stories, it's at the heart of a lot of what we do, is that this resource I think will be for you. So over the course of the next few minutes, 25 minutes probably to be specific, what I'd like you to do is think about things that really excite you about this resource, and then I'm going to kind of cycle back to that question at the end. So let's take a look at some aspects of the little books. We're going to talk about why Mathology Little Books, what some of the key features are for you to think about as we begin the school year. There's going to be some practical ways of getting started with these little books, and then some supports and where to go to support you as you begin planning with this new resource. So here's the big why. Why we do it? Because we want students to look like this when they're learning about math. Here's someone who has engaged in a story and worked through various subtraction scenarios that they read about. So that is the big why. But in addition, as teachers, we know that it takes more than just engaging students in order for them to learn. We need them to get involved in meaningful math conversations. We need to think about differentiation, and this resource allows us to think about that within the various activities that are supported. And more recently, the alignment with the new Alberta curriculum. And I'll talk about ways that that works with the Math Little Books over the course of the next little bit. And altogether, I've seen over and over and over again across Canada how they provide both teachers and students with joyful and positive math in their classrooms. So all these aspects, when we put them together, yes, those are the big whys, but practically, what does that actually look like in my classroom, and how am I going to do this? So the idea is that you will be receiving at your schools a box of Math Little Books. And within that box, there are 72 titles that span kindergarten to grade 3. They cover all strands of the math. They're written by Canadian authors. They include both fiction, nonfiction, cross-curricular, and Indigenous perspectives. And that is the print that is coming soon to your school. We can see here we've got an example of blue. Generally, those are kindergarten books. Orange are generally grade 1 books, and green are generally grade 2 books. But what I'm going to show you is ways of thinking about that with the new curriculum and ways of thinking about that for the needs of your students. So specifically, grade 1, 2, and 3, that means for each book, there's a teacher guide and 5 little books. For kindergarten, there's a teacher guide, 4 little books, and a big book, which we call a lab book. There's also the duplicate of that within a digital library. And you will probably receive a school login and password. That means all the teachers in the school use the same login and password to access your digital library, which means every teacher gets to see all 72 books. And so within that is a digital teacher guide that gives lots of different options for activities, as well as a digital link and application to a book that you might want to project and use in a variety of ways. So the digital library is exactly the same as the print, but because it is a digital application, there are some interesting things that can be done digitally that can't be done in print. So some of the key features that have proven very helpful to educators across Canada is the Indigenous authors and their stories that they have shared with us from their experiences. So within each of these Indigenous authors' books, there is a note to the teacher, and that note is just a real clear summary of the key idea of the perspective they're trying to share through the story, as well as some very practical guiding questions to use with the students. Sometimes they have to do with math, but sometimes they don't. They focus in on that big idea. And then within the story, there's opportunities for various math conversations. Key features, it aligns with the Alberta curriculum. So we see here an example from grade 1, one of the new learning outcomes. We see that there are 2 books that are suggested to start with, and there's opportunities if students aren't quite there yet to look at these books, which are typically kindergarten books. And if they're ready or later in the year and you want to work on bigger numbers up to 100, what would you rather and ways to count are a way to work it. That being said, if I look at grade 2, this expectation, the actual first couple of books would be what would you rather and ways to count. So it's a way of really crossing over the curriculum as well as supporting students where they're at. And I'll show you where these resources are at the end so that even before the resources come to your school or you get the link, you can start taking a look and doing some planning. So practically, what does that look like in a classroom? Well, practically, it probably looks like you sharing a little book or projecting the book up on the screen, reading the story, and having some math conversations. So an example of a math conversation might be, you might ask your students, how might you count the animals here? So it comes from a grade 1 story. And so my question to you is, how might the students count the eyes? If you think to a 6-year-old, or if your Ks are ready for it, or if your grade 2s are just starting skip counting, this is something you might do. If you have the opportunity to put in the chat, how might students count these eyes? Do they start at the top of the page? Do they start at the bottom of the page? How do they keep track?
In chat, someone's sharing that they would count by 2s.
Mm.
And another comment was made in chat. I love that you have an access point for all students. Just thought I'd throw that in there as well.
Mm-hmm. And then within the teacher guide, it gives prompts like this, but then it also adds on other layers. And so one of the questions is, what happens if another crocodile joins? How might students know the total amount of eyes now? They can't physically count those last ones. How might they think about adding a number that they don't actually see something that's there? So we see here that this book talks about counting, and it also talks about and provides opportunities for students to add one more and add two more. So it's not just one concept that's throughout a book, it's a few concepts that you can see that build on each other. And they're great photos and great pictures in these stories. And so what's in the teacher's guide? There's within each set of 5 little books, there is a teacher guide. So that means with coming to your school, there'll be a box and there'll be 72 teacher guides because there's 72 little books. Within those 72, they're kind of organized by grade. So 16 to 18 books are for each grade. Within that, you're going to see a note from the author for the Indigenous perspectives, a learning pathway or a roadmap. And this roadmap starts at the top left, kindergarten or grade 1, and moves all the way down to grade 3. So it shows how that big idea moves through the grades. It also helps you as a teacher differentiate your instruction. You may be a grade 1, but you need to reach up to grade 2 for students, or you might need to reach down into grade 1 for some students. You might be a grade 2 teacher and you might have students on IEPs and you need to reach down to a grade 1. And so these pathways within the teacher guide are going to really make planning really easy to support differentiation. You're going to have a variety of lesson options within the teacher guide, prompts and questions like we just experienced. There's assessment supports within it, as well as home connections, and the line masters that go with the activities are all downloadable in Word, so you can modify them in any way that works for you and your students. So let's take a look at what lesson options mean. Lesson options mean that within the book, there are opportunities for working through 2 different math concepts. Doesn't matter what book, there's always 2 math concepts. So the one we experienced on Safari is counting, and it goes up to counting sets to 20. And then there's also prompts to think about throughout the pages of how to add 1 or 2 more and help students develop efficient strategies to do that. There's always lessons for large group options if you want to work with your whole class. Small group options if you want to support some students with further activities that are guided. And then in kindergarten and grade 1, there's some learning center options that you can set up as a center. And in grade 2, 3, they move more to an independent work option that's there. So when I open up a teacher guide, I'm going to see that there are prompting questions, and we see that on the left, it's in blue. There's opportunities to estimate, to skip count. On the right, we see again some opportunities for prompts for estimating and grouping and skip counting. So we can be really specific about bringing out the math. You know, when we ask, what do you notice in this page? Sometimes they notice, the cat is smiling, but that doesn't really, or the cat is thinking. I'm not sure if he's got his fingers on his chin. That doesn't necessarily help students move forward in the math. But when we ask specifically, how might Jess count the marbles? That gets students really thinking about the counting. And then on the bottom right, under the orange, this concept of comparing is carried throughout the book as well. What teachers often do is they will do one concept one week, so in this case estimating, and another concept the next week, which is comparing. It provides right there on the page, what are the things you're watching for? In other words, as students are giving these ideas, what am I thinking about assessment? When do I know to move on? When they've actually got it. And this is an example from Ways to Count from a grade 2 book. And so when we look even more specifically at a lesson, it's kind of written in a 3-part lesson format where you can use the whole class to engage them. And this is a great activity. I've done it even with teachers. It's about how many eyes. So they talk about estimating how much is 1 minute. The teacher might demo a little bit how many eyes. But then when the students get to work on it, again, it's pretty quick, 1 minute. They can make circles pretty fast. And then the students spend time counting those eyes. And if they count by ones, the teacher might encourage them how to group them, different ways of working on counting. And then when you bring the class back together, it gives you very specific ideas of how to bring about that math. In terms of planning, math focus is right there. What materials you need is right there. Ideas on how to differentiate is right there. And again, that assessment. What are the things I'm actually looking for in this activity? So practically speaking, oh, I'm going too far ahead here. Practically speaking, it's always lovely to have home connections and ideas. Of course, once we get familiar with the stories, often it's easy to create them. But here is a line master that can either be sent home exactly as is, or you can copy and paste what you want to share some of the opportunities students might want to work at home, as well as in the teacher guide, there is the thumbnails of all the line masters. And we can see that the thumbnails of the line masters provide really good opportunities for students to work through some math strategies. They're not just worksheets, they're activities that students are actively engaged in, actively talking with partners, and actively working through. The first line master always is an assessment line master, and then there's a variety of activities with the last line master, often some sort of problem set that students might work on individually. So all these line masters are found in your eText library. So you can go there on the menu on the left-hand side, click them on and print them out. But they're also found on the open website, Mathology Canada. And I'm going to show you in a minute the benefits of maybe going there to get all that information. And in terms of students, the students have the little book in print, or you have the opportunity to project and use it that way. On the back of the little book, that's what we're seeing here. We see that it shows kind of the math focus, but it has a URL and it has a QR code. So that QR code, an iPad or Chromebook can be set over top, or even a phone, or the URL can be set up in a center's, however you share URLs with students, and that will open up the little book. And I wish I had time to go in and get a little book, but sometimes we run out of time, so I'm not going to do that today. It has a read and listen function. So once the students open it on their Chromebook or iPad or some sort of electronic device, students just click read and listen. It looks exactly like this screen. It's easy for students to find the read and listen button, and it has the audio feature on every page that students can just listen to the story, as well as on that home page. They have a try this activity, mean it's a digital activity that they can practice with. And the instructions for the digital activity are very easy. There's a little button they press for a little microphone. It gives them the instructions audio, and then they can play around digitally to practice some of these math concepts. In the case of on Safari, it's about skip counting and counting that they have opportunities to work with. And so because it's a QR code or a URL, there is no login required for students. So this has been a great feature that has worked really, really well in classrooms. And of course, it's very helpful as a teacher that you don't have to worry about logins and passwords. They open up the QR code, they press on the URL, it opens up to that picture on the right-hand side. So getting started, first things first, you have 72 books. How do I know what book to start with? Well, on the website, I'll put that into the chat, or if Lisa can put that into the chat now, it's Pearson Mathology Canada. You're going to find some supports. One of those supports is the correlations that I used earlier in here. The other support is called a Getting Started Guide. And this Getting Started Guide is all things Mathology, but on one of the pages, you'll find some organization. We see here that this is about numbers tell us how much and how many. So my kindergarten books, my grade 1 books, and then as we go forward into other big ideas, I see all the grade theirs. Most importantly, it gives me the math concepts. So if I'm in grade 1 and I want to work on numbers greater than 20, I'm going to go to the grade 2 book and look at quantities to 100 in the story, What Would You Rather? And I wish I had time to read some of these stories or other examples, but within this short time, we don't. So I encourage you, when you get your login, that login will be coming to you probably through your administrator, to go in and check out some of these stories. Check the story first, read through the story, and then go to the teacher guide and find the things that are helpful to you. But I think just by reading the stories, you're going to find them, ideas will start percolating for you. So coming soon to your school is the print box, which will be 72 books. Within that, they're kind of coordinated a little bit by grade, meaning that all the orange are generally grade 1, all the greens are generally grade 2s, all the blues are generally kindergarten, and you have a teacher guide and 5 little books that go with that. You also will be receiving, probably sooner than the actual box of books, the login to the password and login to your digital text. And you can find the place to put that at Pearson eText Canada. All you have to do is Google Pearson eText Canada. There's a nice page there. You put in your school. Everybody at the school uses the same login and password, and it brings you to a library of 72 books. So if you're French, you're going to see the French books. If you're English, you're going to see the English books. I'm not sure if you're French, you see French and English. In any case, you will have it in your language, available for your students in the language of instruction. On the Open Pearson Mathology website, this is where you're going to find the line masters, the correlations, everything you need for kind of thinking about beforehand. So this is something you can go to beforehand and start some thinking about the getting started. There's a couple little tutorial videos that kind of review what I've talked about here. And most importantly, those curriculum correlations with your new curriculum. So you can even download that and start thinking about, even without knowing the stories, what stories you might fit into the resources you're already using. It kind of gives you an idea of where you might place those across your year of planning. And so when you go into the line masters, they kind of look like this by grade. And when you open up by grade, you have the opportunity to look at it by story. So that idea of would you rather, it's available in a PDF or a Word doc. The benefit of a Word doc, if you download them, you can modify them in any way that you want. Or you can look at the button on the top left. You can just download all of them. And then you have all of them for the year. And then on your own computer, you can organize them in a way that works for you. And so this is just a summary of where to go. At the Pearson Mathology site, you're going to see the Getting Started guide, the line masters, the correlations, the tutorial videos. And on the e-text is where you find your teacher guide and all things digital. On the back of the little book, that's where you find your QR code. So at this point, this picture might be worth taking a screenshot of, so that you kind of have a little remembrance once this thing comes to you, where to go to get information. And again, this is just the beginning. There'll be more information coming as well. This is just a big overview of what's to come. And so the whole idea of Math Little Books is that idea of joyful math stories for students, but also joyful math teaching. It's hand in hand of the idea of the Math Little Books. So I'm curious to know, if you have the opportunity to type it into the chat, what did you find joyful about the Math Little Books?
I'll just give people a moment to type it in chat. So the question is, what did you find joyful about the Mathology Little Books? Having French available at the onset is great. Yes. New, fresh stories, something different than what we have right now. Connects math concepts to real life situations that will make learning math meaningful to kids. Definitely. The digital component. It's a nice piece. Excited to have both physical copies and digital options. It's nice to have the choice. I agree. New ideas. Go ahead, Kim.
It's nice to have the choice, as well as the digital applications, allows students to go in and listen by themselves. There's also a digital application of a wordless text. So when you're projecting on the screen, you can just look at that nice big picture without necessarily the words getting in the way when you're having those math conversations. So the digital just adds that other layer of access in a variety of ways.
Thanks for mentioning that. Thank you for connecting literacy to mathematics and students' opportunity to explore and investigate the pictures. They can be used as a resource for other curricular areas. QR code on the book, so easy for kindergarten. Is there a link for French Blackline Masters? Is a question that just came up.
Okay, so on the website that the link is at, if you look at the top right corner, it'll say French. And so if you click that French little button on the top right corner of the website that I was just looking at, then you'll see all the French.
Excellent. And I'm just popping it into chat. I just click the French button and I'll just send that off to you in case that helps.
Terrific. So I'd just like to thank you for sectioning out a little bit of your precious time to be with us today and to learn a little bit about a resource that's coming soon. So if you don't hear from your principal shortly, you might want to ask, are we getting a login to the Mathology Little Books? And then that way we'll make sure that everybody gets this resource. And if you have a colleague that wasn't with us today, this is being recorded and it will be placed in a way that is accessible for others to look at if they're interested, if any of your colleagues are interested. So again, thank you. Have a great evening. And I just wish you great, joyful stories with your students in the near future. We will be around to answer individual questions, but we realize how busy you are. So again, we wish you a great afternoon. And if you have any specific questions, then we're here to stay behind to answer those.
Thanks so much, Kim and Lisa. That was a fantastic presentation. Lots of useful information there. And thanks to everyone for coming along as well.
Thank you, Sharon, and thanks to all the educators. And Kim, there are a lot of thank yous in chats. Some folks are saying great presentation. Thank you, Kimberly. You're a wonderful presenter. Well done. And thank you. Have a great evening. So lots of thank yous. Thanks so much, everyone. And we're wishing you all the best with your new school year. It's an exciting time. It's a great new resource. Glad you're excited about it. That's fantastic.
I love presenting about Math Little Books because it's
Yeah.
always positive.
Yeah.
We always know that they are a great resource, that as teachers, we all love them. And so it's not a hard presentation to do when that is always the outcome, right? It's always the outcome. So
exactly.
It's great.
Wonderful. Well, folks, feel free to jump off if you don't have any questions, but if you do, we'll stick around for another couple of minutes here until folks drop off.
And Lisa, again, I didn't look at the outset, the total participants.
60.
Thank you.
60 for this one. Thank you. We are a Spanish bilingual school. I hope we can have these little books in Spanish as well. That's good feedback we can bring to the team. Currently, only English and French, but an idea would be to use them in the wordless version potentially. I'm not sure if that would be an option to do. Yeah.
I think that's a great option, using the wordless text to project, to have your own conversations, as well as all the line masters are downloadable in Word, so you can take out the English and print in the Spanish. And of course, using the teacher guides, you can look at the lesson and present the lesson in Spanish. So I don't think it really matters what language, you can use it adapted in any language.
I like that idea. Thanks. And Julianne, I hope you heard the answer to that one. If not, we can pop it into chat. I'll just pop a note into chat as we're waiting to see if there are any other questions here. Great. I know sometimes when I'm on a call, I forget to click the leave button. So I'm guessing just based on the quiet here, there probably aren't any other questions. So we can probably jump off now. Thanks so much, Kim.